Introduce him. This is Scott. Scott makes music as Blaerg. And Scott, tell us about yourself.
That's a big question. I guess, I've been making music under that moniker for about 12 years. And I guess I think of it as breakcore, but it's maybe not hard and heavy enough for some people to meet that categorization, so it sort of gets lumped with IDM maybe, even though I don't really think of it as that. And I've seen the drill and bass tag attached to that a lot, which I don't think is even a valid tag at all.
I don't know what that means.
Yeah, it doesn't mean anything. So I've just been doing that for a long time now, it seems like, and I've had some great experiences along the way with doing that, and pretty satisfied with my output so far, but always looking to improve and try new things, learn new stuff. And I'm right on the edge of starting to transform my sound in a pretty significant way, in my opinion, significant. But
what's that? What's significant about that change? I'm curious. Like
abandoning the step sequencer software approach and bringing in a different compositional method with the use of the Tidal cycles software.
So what were you using before Tidal to sequence? And
FL Studio.
Okay, that's
always.
what I thought.
So for a long time was basically, I didn't get into synthesizers until a few years ago. I was more into like samples and seeing what could be done with samples exclusively. So it was basically just FL Studio and SoundForge.
Yeah, I remember when I was first introduced to your stuff, you're doing everything like destructive editing, right? Like within SoundForge, you'd bounce stuff out and then just do
pretty
destructive
much
editing within SoundForge. That's pretty cool. Do you still go that route after you render what you're working on?
Yeah, I mean, SoundForge is great for just very rapidly editing things down into usable pieces. And after a while, I got into audio mulch too, so that's kind of
nice. Yeah,
shapes things in different ways that aren't so like static or whatever. But I think I kind of reached the conclusion of the entirely sample-based approach, at least for myself, and started to get interested in synthesizers, which I'd always kind of, for some reason, eschewed that, but I would use like samples of other people's synthesizers, which is kind of dumb or whatever. But I don't know, I got interested in that, and then that kind of segued into, do I want to explore this like modular thing that's happening? And I took the plunge on that. Very glad I did. I've actually learned a lot more about, just regular synthesizers, like hardware stuff, from using modular.
Yeah, I've had that experience too.
Yeah, it's really opened it up for me, made it a lot more, I can get a lot more utility out of things that are what I thought kind of vanilla. You can actually, if you really get in there and dig with the parameters, you can do more stuff with simpler items. But that kind of quickly was followed with my introduction to the Tidal cycles software. And so now I'm sort of at this point where utilizing those two things, totally abandoning the step sequencing, linear, like visual kind of creating music with. Doing that new approach has been really exciting for me, and it's really flexible, and it's easy to get to very complex results in a short span of time versus plotting out every single, discrete event.
So could you explain how you integrate the two, the modular and the Tidal, and how are you using them sort of to get together?
So Tidal is a pretty new development. It's open sourced, I believe that's the word you want to use for it. I'm not real. That's not my world. I'm only dealing with this thing because it's an interesting tool to me. I'm not a programmer. I'm not, that good with computers in general, I wouldn't say, but my introduction to that was just a sample-based manipulation thing. So it plays patterns. You can use samples and pattern them out in strange ways. But shortly after I started to get a little bit, adept with using that kind of code to manipulate samples, they came out with Tidal MIDI. So that allows you to use all of the sort of, I don't know what would the word be, like the parlance of Tidal with sending MIDI signals. So that opened up programming strange stuff with that code, both samples and MIDI, and then also translating MIDI stuff to CV with a Kenton module that I have. And that sort of like those three things all together is a very weird, flexible, recursive, thing to employ. So I was telling Nick on the way over here, I'm really excited to finally start implementing real-time parallel execution of patterns, some of it being MIDI, some of it being samples, and just recording the final output versus making stuff, recording it, editing it down, and then bringing it into the sample environment, because there's benefits to both. So what I really would like to get to is a point where I can set up an environment of things, and it might be different per track or whatever, but
sure,
just, having modulars going into audio mulch, and I'm controlling audio mulch with Tidal, and I'm also using samples in Tidal, and all this stuff is coexisting, but it's all related and coming from the same plane of operation. So it's really, there's a lot of possibilities there, and it's pretty exciting, and it kind of helps me get to a place where I kind of have these ideas in my head of things I would like to accomplish, but I would never be able to do them just doing step-based programming, because it's just, you have to divide things and count stuff. And when you have Tidal, you're just saying this pattern is this, and I want it to do this at this time, and it just does the math for you, and that's makes it fast, and you get the cool result, and you can just do it and move on. So I don't like belaboring over tracks. It's really painful, and my history has been to spend 6 months making a 3-minute track. That's gets old. So I like to move on to the next thing.
What got you into modular? I'm always curious what the first thing somebody saw that was oh, I want to try that. It was maths for me in QMMG. It was a very classic, second wave eurorack. I got to try that because I'll never afford a surge, or that type of thing.
I think I looked at the Muffs forum for a while and was just sort of wow, that's a whole lot of things to think about, and not really knowing how you would even use it. Mm-hmm. Just out of curiosity, kind of dipping in with that for a while. But I think, the first time I moved to Minneapolis, and then that has Foxtone Music there, so I was able to physically walk into a place where there's a ton of that stuff. And I was fortunate enough to go there on a day when Logan from Logain was there, and he was working with Eric at Foxtone in some capacity, and literally these guys spent 3 hours just taking me through the basics. This is a potential customer, and they spent that time saying I'm kind of walking in there if I were to try to maybe buy some stuff, what would I do? And they were really, really nice, and spent that time doing that, and made it a lot more approachable, I think, than if I were to just kind of try to wing my way through it by buying stuff online or whatever.
Yeah, it can be a costly trial and error experience.
Yeah. And so that made it that made it a lot less intimidating, I think. And so I bought some stuff. And
what was your first one?
I think I got a tip-top oscillator and a maths and a VCA. I think I got a Pittsburgh filter too. And then shortly after that, another oscillator and another filter. And
then the wheels came off and you just couldn't stop.
Yeah, you know, and I'm the kind of person that dives in and does the minimal amount of education possible. So, you know, there's of course a fried module and totally my fault, you know, that kind of learning process. So yeah, but yeah, I got that stuff. And shortly, this was before I'd come across Tidal. So that didn't really come into play till later, but I got the CV to MIDI right away because I wanted to be able to sequence with the DAW. So yeah, and I just kind of played that game of, well, I'm just gonna get this much, and then I'll stop, and I'm beyond 9U at this point, and I kind of like purposefully got a case that's way too big, so it's like never gonna be full, and it's still like 1/3 empty, I think. So I kind of got over that module lust after a year or so of that, and now I'm more casual about, you know, I have plenty of stuff to use, and it's not like I'm dying to have like any specific thing, and so I can just kind of have fun with it, use it, learn, try to get some depth with the stuff that I do have. And
that's the sweet spot, kind of.
I totally still feel like an infant in terms of like the things I know, and you know, I'm very like, I try to approach it very like always with a blank slate. Like I'll try to maybe read about a particular technique, and then just, do I have the stuff to do that, and then try to implement it, and you know, at the same time maybe produce something musically usable. But yeah, I still feel very humbled by the amount of knowledge that you can come across on the Muffs forum. Like, just the depth of that is astounding to me. So I feel like this is going to be something I can pursue for probably the rest of my life, and never really even feel like I'm like super good at, you know, being a synthesist. But I like having that open-ended element to it, and it's just, I mean, there's so much stuff you can do with it. There's so many modules that it's just mind-blowing, staggering amount of stuff to check out and learn about. So it's really fascinating to me.
Yeah, growing all the time too.
Like, what was some of the things you've discovered moving to modular that maybe you couldn't do in other environments? Like, what are some of the things that like you've learned, or new tricks you've figured out?
You know, just even what modulation is, just understanding that at a root level, I think has been a mind-opening thing. Like, you know, so you have like envelopes and stuff like that, but using them to do things that, you know, fixed architecture synths don't do.
Right.
And like, well, what if you do that to this? And then it's like, well, that's awesome. Why don't they have that on like everything, you know? So I can't think of anything specific, but yeah, just the openness of it, and the sort of like, I mean, it's cool because it's like, it's so flexible that you have plenty of room to make crappy noises. Like, it's totally up to you to shape it into something useful or not. And I don't know. I don't know if I'm answering your question or not, but
it doesn't matter. It was not a great question.
Since the integration of Tidal in your setup, do you find like you're kind of gearing your rig towards a certain direction now, where there might have been overlap with Tidal, or do you think like the two are going hand in hand pretty well with what you already have in your rig?
I think they're going pretty well hand in hand, and I think the stuff that I have right now is pretty bread and butter kind of things, and I really want to continue to get stronger with those more classic techniques before I move on to the, like, I don't know what it would be, like the third wave, the crazy stuff, the weird, you know, I mean, there's so many I can't even think of them, but
So you're kind of using it mainly for like East Coast style synthesis right now.
Yeah.
You got your envelope, your filter, your voice
Yeah.
type of thing. Okay.
But I do like the make noise kind of weird, applying things to aspects that you wouldn't think of, for an East Coast kind of style, but I like to blend the two as well.
Sure.
I feel like I need to get stronger on just the East Coast style first before I plunge more into the crazier stuff, but I know I'm going to get there. I mean, it's really enticing. Modular has sort of opened me up to as well to like, I've made so much music that's incredibly rigid and step, this stops here and this starts there and this is always in time with this, like that kind of thing. I've made so much of that kind of music that I'm really enticed by the floppy, flexible quality of modular stuff. So
Getting off the grid.
yeah. I like combining the two. So it's really, you patch up the modular and like you're running Renee with an envelope or something. So you're getting weird time that doesn't really have a BPM or whatever. And, like this sounds great. I have no idea how I'm going to use this. How would this fit into like a step sequencer and that kind of thing? I recorded all that stuff because it was like, this sound is too good to just let it go. But now actually with Tidal, I'm able to bring that in a lot more easily because of the way it works. It doesn't like box you in so much. So I like having this free flowing, weird, gelatinous thing right upside this really rigid, like tight, technical kind of thing. And that's exciting to me. So I guess in terms of timbres, maybe I'm not so far out there yet, but at least I'm moving toward like the not so skeletal, hard, 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 kind of sequencing stuff with the modular itself. So
Are you sequencing a lot within your modular, or is that like strictly Tidal at this point, or other like?
I like to do both actually.
Yeah.
I'm actually doing less of what I originally intended, which was, just 1 volt per octave, like, linear melodies and stuff like that. I thought that's more what I was going to use with the MIDI to CV, but I found that I really want to explore doing weirder things. So, for instance, the Kenton has 4 CV outs, and so Tidal can tell those CV outs to do LFOs or whatever. I'm interested more. I'm more keen to like try putting all those into a Logic module and seeing what that spits out, and having a sequencer be driven by that rather than just note,
Sure.
coming right out of the computer. And so it seems like you can just sort of try stuff and things will come out that you would never actually intentionally design that are way more interesting than what you may try to intentionally design.
Absolutely. Yeah. I feel you. Yeah, I used to describe it to myself as like structured chaos. You know what I mean? Like when I was trying to break out of sequencing from my DAW and more into modular sequencing, I wanted to find something that, it would align on the grid in some fashion, but not necessarily be programmed to the grid. You know what I mean? Like you said, like have, a comparator generating gates, which would drive your sequencer, you know what I mean? And just coming up with entirely new structures that, there's definitely people out there that can think that up in software, but I'm not one of those, you know what I mean? Like the modular kind of brought that out of me easier. I was able to figure out shit like that, which I was struggling to do in software using like Badul and things like that, but yeah, I feel you. Do you have any sequencers, like straight up sequencers in your rig right now, or you?
I mostly just use the Renee.
Gotcha.
Cool. I like what it, I especially like putting weird stuff into the clock input that's, like a square wave that the width is being modulated or something. So you get like bursts of notes rather than just 1 2 3 4. I've learned quite a lot from just using that sequencer, but I know there's still more I've never even implemented it to do, but that's the main one. And then I kind of sometimes, you can use transposition in cool ways with sequencers. It's like, well, I'm using this $500 module to like make the note change like every fourth thing, but or you can do it the other way too. You can transpose it, but just having tools to do that stuff is cool, and it's interesting to see what happens, even if you're only using like this 1/10 of its power. But that doesn't mean next time you can't like have that be the center of the patch and have it be doing like this crazy octopus thing.
So sort of the opposite of that. What are some things that like you've got or you've used that surprised you as far as like disappointments? What was something you're like, this is going to be great, and then you started using it, you're like, this isn't clicking with me for some reason?
The one that comes to mind most rapidly is the woggle bug. I don't even know why I bought that thing. Like, I got so excited for it, I think, and I was, maths was like, wow, and what was some of the, I know I had a couple other, well, like Renee, and then I don't know, I think I was watching the James Sigler demo of that or something, and I was like, oh, I can think of so many things I'm going to do with this, and then I got one, and I just tried and could not get it to do anything I wanted it to do or anything random and cool. It just, it didn't, that one surprised me. Like, I thought that was going to, because I didn't have any sort of random source in my rig at all, so I was like, well, I need this function, so I'm gonna get it, and then I had to get rid of it. It enraged me.
It's interesting, man. Yeah, I'm kind of like the total opposite. Like, I bought a maths when they first came out, and I just never jived with it. Like,
really?
Yeah, I would see Nick do like crazy shit with his, and I'm just like, I would play with one, and I would just, nothing would be coming out of it like that I was happy with. I ended up selling it within like a week, and I had one of the Mark I woggle bugs, and I loved it to shit. I used it all over some of the Prometheus stuff towards the end there. I was using it for, as a sound source and control. And then I sold it at one point, and now I have the new version, the black panel. It's like slimmer, and I use the fuck out of that thing. Like, I don't know, and I still don't have a maths to this day. Like, I see people that have like 3-4 maths in their system, and it's just like, I just don't get it. You know what I mean? Like, I have not wrapped my head around that module yet.
So listeners of the program, they can email Greg and yell at him about that. SysEx Dumpster at gmail.com and address it to Greg.
You address it to Greg.
Fuck maths.
I used to have 2. Now I've 1 again because 2 was a little too much. But
Pretty wide.
Yeah, it's I wanted a little more variety, but I would never sell it. It's still one of my favorites. But it's a versatile
to
thing.
each their own, and that's why we have all these different choices. So.
And I've talked about things that I loved in even our last podcast that I've now sold.
Really?
So it's like, I don't know. Next week, you never know, man.
Yeah.
So what are some of the things that you'll they can take out of your cold dead hand that you modules come and go, but this is going to be in your rig, you think, forever?
I don't even know if I have something like that. I guess maybe I'm thinking of sound source ones. I just use a pair of the Tip Top Z3000s, and I have the old version of the PDO, but I still need to dig in with that one a bit more. I don't think I have any super allegiance to any of the things I have. They're all kind of potentially able to be sold, but it's kind of like what I got now is I'm still learning it, so I'm not really bored with any of the things, but I don't have any super strong like do or die pieces that spring to mind. I guess I don't have any because nothing's springing to mind. So.
Are you like a super filter, like, oh, I love filters, or is it more just like, I got a filter because I need it type of thing?
I have 4.
There you
Probably
go.
Too many.
That's my man right there. Yeah.
Probably too many.
Yeah.
No such thing.
Nope.
Yeah, and it's always like thinking about not, I don't need to buy a slew. I have 4 filters, that kind of things. I kind of forget about that, but yeah. I don't know. I'm starting to work with percussion, but it's not really going that well yet. But that's kind of something I'm more interested in checking out. but again, space and, I don't know. I like things that double as other things as much as possible.
So you're saying are you talking about like drum modules in particular, or making drum sounds out of a sound source, an envelope, and a VCA, or
Both.
okay? Which ones have you tried? Like which drum modules have you tried so far and enjoyed?
I only have one, and I recently got it. It's is it Neuron? Audio damage?
Oh, the 8 HP like drum, or is it the wider one that came out? No, that's the Boom Shack is the wide one, and then there's the Neuron's the FM one, right?
That one.
Okay,
that's the one.
Yeah, the Boom Shack's like, I think more like analog style, and the Neuron's more FM.
I got that one, and so far I'm not able to do anything with it, but I haven't spent that much time with it either. I feel like that was kind of like the Woggle Bug. Like, I'm like, holy smokes, and like, I want that. So I just straight up bought it, which I usually just try to find stuff used.
Yeah.
But I was like, I definitely want that. So I got it, and then I just can't seem to get it to do what I want, which is odd, but I'm also sort of open to the idea of this could be something useful and cool that you didn't think you would use it in a certain way. So I'm kind of thinking about why separate percussion and non-percussion sounds, and maybe like even why make it a bass sound or a lead sound or a pad sound, like just kind of making patches, and like whatever they are is what they are. So if it has like a little bit of this percussion sound in it or whatever, like it's just a piece of a thing, and just trying to be more, I'm trying to give it another chance and see if I can work it in somehow. But as far as just like straight up drum beats, I only got a couple oscillators and a couple of, filters and envelopes. You sort of run out pretty quick if you're trying to build an entire drum kit.
Yeah. So
it's just an experiment to see what I can make out of it. And it doesn't have to be the entire thing of percussion. It can be supplemental to samples or whatever else. So that's kind of the newest thing I've been working on. It's kind of not really going that great, but it's all, fumbling and baby steps all the time. So whatever.
Doing anything with breaks still when it comes to percussion, or I guess I should say for your drum sounds, are you still using like sample bass, but like synthesis for almost everything else? Or do you just not really differentiate anymore? Like you were saying, you just kind of like make patches, and if it has percussion elements, then yeah, you just roll with that.
I kind of just grab from everywhere. I was really heavily reliant on using natural drum sounds in the past, but trying to mangle them into things that don't sound like that.
Right.
I've opened more to non-natural sounds, especially like deep kick drums and stuff. I always kind of shied away from that in the past. I don't really know why, but after a while it just becomes like, well, there's more variety, so let's have that. Like I always want more, so of course more is always better. But yeah, I'm interested in trying to widen that out, and actually using Tidal pieces of breakbeats and so forth isn't really that ideal. It's kind of better to use like single shots. So I kind of want to get into seeing how I can combine single shots with modular sounds, and like everything's kind of more like just one sound per trigger kind of deal.
Gotcha.
I need to also explore the Nord modular for percussion, because there's a lot there, and that's probably my most neglected item that I have. Like it's sort of like so amazing but so wide that you can't, I don't know, it's sort of too big or something. Like it's sort of intimidating. Like I can do anything. I'll choose nothing. Like
do you have the first or the G2 or the first one?
I have the mini.
Oh, cool.
Or the micro modular.
Yeah, I used to have one of those. I kind of missed that thing.
Yeah, it's
neat.
Pretty cool.
What's your setup for live performance now? Do you bring the modular out at all, or is that mostly studio only?
I have never taken the modular anywhere. The cases that I have are not at all portable.
Gotcha.
They're incredibly unattractive items that,
Did you make them? The cases?
I didn't make them, but like the big black one that I have is like really supposed to be for a mixer. It's like the big carpeted box. So
Oh, nice.
like one of those. awful looking, but really ergonomic.
Hey,
So I
counts.
dig that. I don't feel like I would bring that stuff around, just because I don't think it would work. It's just I can't change the sounds fast enough, and I have to do quite a lot of noodling to get somewhere with sounds, and it just seems like not worth it. So this will be my third performance with Tidal. So I haven't really even done that much, and I'm not really sure where I'm going with that. So that's going to be entirely sample based. I considered bringing the micro modular and running Tidal MIDI with that, but it just became too many things to juggle. And when it's a lot of text on the screen, it just becomes like, oh my God, what is happening? Like, just wanted to pare it down and try to focus on having it sound the best that it can. So, I don't think I'm going to do that, but that could change.
Scott's playing at Wood Street Gallery tonight, which is a gallery downtown that actually has a Rio Giacchetta exhibit on the floor underneath too. So we were checking that out a little before we came over here to record this.
Or Kevin Bednar, who is Bednar in Pittsburgh, has done Tidal live coding stuff in the past, and he's projected his screen onto the behind him. Or have you done that, or are you planning on doing that? Because it's such an interesting thing. Like, you're not just someone standing there. Like if we can't see that conceptually, like, oh, I know that's really cool, but once it's up there, you're like, oh, that's just hypnotic to watch.
Yeah. Every time I've done a Tidal performance, it's been projected.
That's cool.
There may be some disappointment because I'm not really going to be manipulating the code that much because I'm just plain not that good at it yet. It's really not something that I've developed a skill in terms of improvising and making the code change in real time. I will do a completely freeform improvisation at the end, I think. But in terms of the length of the set, it's going to be more like straightforward use of the code that already exists because it's pretty complicated. And just to even toy with it a little bit makes it fall apart sometimes. So
we have seen that because we've seen Kevin like doing something and it's just like error, like just the screen just fills it red, which is really cool to see. But like oh God, I can't imagine like just watching the calamity unfold.
Trying to troubleshoot code while you're like in front of a group of people, not a fun experience. Yeah.
Yeah, it just reminded me, like, I do love watching, like, the projection of that. You know what I mean? Even if there's not too much manipulation going on. Like, the first time I watched Kevin use Tidal, it just reminded me of, like, the year 2001 when I had first seen, like, Xanopticon and people like Dave and everyone doing stuff live. And, you know, I was only experimenting with shit in my bedroom at that point. I'd never really conceived of how this could be done live, you know what I mean? And I would see, like, Ryan with his 2 desktop computers and a DJ mixer and like, you know, Badul and FL Studio and all this shit going on his screen, and I'm just like, I have no fucking idea what I'm looking at. Right. You know what I mean? When I'd peep his screen, but I was like, it's cool to see. You know what I mean? Like, you don't see that too much these days. You know what I mean? Like, you have no idea what's happening behind the scenes on somebody's laptop. You know what I mean? Like, I have no problems with someone doing a laptop performance. You know what I mean? I know some people do, and I think having that projection helps those people that are still kind of like hesitant to, like, you know, give credit to a laptop performer, and they're like, oh, you know,
they're just pushing a button,
right? They're not just pushing play. There's something going on. They're not just checking their email.
Right.
There's something actually happening there, you know, and it's fucking cool to see, you know, that window into what is happening, no matter what it is, or even see it error out. You know what I mean? Like, I remember a few times, you know, things would crash, like at Hackerfest and things like that. There was so many computer crashes going on, gaps in the performances, but, you know, it added to I don't know, the magic of it. Yeah, exactly. It's like
this really is on the cusp of falling apart.
Right. I was like, these guys are taking risks. You know what I mean? They're not just bouncing out their set to a CD and pushing play. Like, they're, you know, it's risky business, and it was really interesting to see. That blew my mind in 2001, and, you know, I changed the way I thought about everything. I haven't really been the same since, you know what I mean? So I think it's cool that, you know, people like you and Kevin utilizing Tidal, I think, will maybe inspire people who, the next generation of people who want to get into electronic music and, want to utilize a laptop and get crazy with it and not just generate like, house music or something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like I think this is like a interesting doorway for people like that who have not seen it before.
Yeah, I definitely had that experience, what you're talking about, when I first saw Tidal used, which was by a guy named Mike that lives in the Minneapolis area. He produces under the name Kindome.
Yeah.
Kindome. I always thought it was Kind Ohm, but he says Kindome. It's like an anagram of his name. So I saw him perform with it, and he's quite masterful at the improvisational element. And yeah, because, I heard about it. I heard about, he was actually on NPR, Minnesota Public Radio, short piece talking about this, because he at that point he was kind of involved in like code camp stuff for kids and like trying to engage like young people around doing coding and stuff, and his thing was using this music thing. So he was on for that, and I had heard about that, and I listened to it, and I thought, well, that's probably really dumb. That's probably really lame. And I checked it out anyway, and I was really impressed, so I emailed him, and he was playing soon, so I went to go see him, and then it was like, okay, I'm literally the only person watching it, but I mean, I was floored. I was like, dude, you have to help me figure out how to do this, because I want to do this. And seeing the text on the screen and not having any clue what any of that stuff means, but listening and having that feedback and looking at it and seeing it change and then executing it and hearing it change, even just after that first observation of that performance, I kind of had an idea of what was going on. It was like, it seems like so futuristic and alien, but also very approachable. And fortunately, he's a nice enough dude to like really spend some time helping me get up and running with that. And yeah, it's refreshed my enthusiasm for making music potentially more than it even was when I first started. Like, it's like that exciting to me. I cannot, like, I will sit and write code with Tidal for hours on end and not get tired of it, because it's just so fascinating and flexible and fun. And you'll be able to see that tonight, even if I'm not manipulating the code that much. I think the code will probably be far more dense than what you may have seen Kevin do. And then it has a lot of like cheater notes and stuff with weird names.
I like code comments.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
always
that's
trying to see that shit.
It's totally necessary. It's literally like a huge long page of just blocks and blocks and blocks of code.
Plus, it doesn't have indentation like C++ or Java.
It
Like,
can if you want it to.
Oh, okay, I've never
Okay.
seen that before.
It can if you want it to. I never learned anything the right way, so it doesn't. Mine doesn't, and it's probably harder to look at for that reason. But yeah, it's not. It looks like a mess.
Actually, going back to like you were talking about like Kendom, I've never actually seen him perform, but I've only heard recordings of it.
Mm-hmm.
So even without seeing that element of the real time manipulation, all the changes he's doing sonically, it's still also super interesting.
Mm-hmm.
The recording of yours, I think I've only heard one of your recordings. Is there only one? Like
Recording of a performance?
Yeah, performance.
Yeah, there was one I put out on SoundCloud for a while.
Likewise, it sounded amazing, but even without seeing all of that cool stuff with it.
Yeah, I think having a good outcome, an interesting, pleasing musical outcome is always the bottom line, and it helps you get to really strange conclusions. Like, it just like timing is so easy to be so flexible with and complex with, but you can also be really straight with it too. And you can swap between the two, and I mean, like, the things you can do with time signatures, and it's just great. I love it.
How much, like, I'm curious, how would you do like a recursive kind of rhythm that's like like an Aphex bouncing ball thing? Is that like something that you can conceptualize in your head how you would do it in there? That's like I don't know how that would like work.
Yeah, you could, because you can, you can just make a pattern and you can have a pattern that just has the one sound, but then you can say every other or every next pattern, you can say increase the density of that pattern by decimal points. So you could say, you could create a piece of arithmetic that says every time, next time a little bit faster.
Okay.
Like there's ways to do that. Yeah.
Now, do you find like, oh, I want to kind of get better at math now that you've like got into Tidal? No, okay.
Nope.
Is that? I was playing with some generative graphics stuff the other night, like stupid JavaScript and HTML5 stuff, and I was like, oh, I hit this wall where it's like I better learn a lot. Like I better get much better at algebra, and I was kind of like, oh, fuck this, you know.
Fortunately, with Tidal, it's kind of sprung out of an academic place, so there's all these. Oh, let's be mean and call them like code goons or something. I don't know. They're just that's so fair. Into like, look how elegantly I made this weird thing. Like, and then they don't want to use it for anything. But those guys are willing to share that stuff with you. So, you know, I was asking. There's one guy in particular. I won't say what he is, but you know, he's like kind of
just call him a goon.
Yeah. He's kind of always got a solution to any kind of question. Like, how would you do this if you wanted to? And be like, well, you do this. And they're like, could you provide an example? And then if you got that example, then you can twist that and change the values and stuff and make it do all kinds of nutty stuff. So there's a bunch of custom stuff I've incorporated into the back end of Tidal for my particular machine that is of that ilk. And there's like, you know, it's just about how cleverly can you code it? Like if you really know the nuts and bolts, but if you just have the example, and you have it in there, you can turn a huge function into a single word. So like every 3 do this thing, and it's your specific code that you made, and it's like, it's great.
I want to be able to like make an artistic effect, and that's the end of my care at that point. That's when I realized when I got like Max for Live or whatever, Max MSP, it's like I like using people's stuff, but I have no interest in digging into that or React or anything. Like the modular is kind of how I experiment like that, because that's just more fun and readily understood by me. I was like a
definitely
theft
more fun
programmer for years. You know, I was a quote unquote programmer. I was a good Googler in theft, like straight up. Just end on me being a thief. End of podcast.